What's going on, Pizza Fam? Welcome back to another episode of the Pizza King podcast. I'm your host, Tyrell Reed, and today's Thursday, so you already know what that means. We're doing Takeout Tips. I really wanted to kind of get a little bit deeper into what's been happening in the news recently versus doing a store update this week. So unless you've been under a rock in the pizza game, you've been hearing all the noise about flour, right? About flour. Not about marketing, not about trends around flour, but around regulation around flour. New York just pushed a bill that targets potassium bromate used in flour. Other states are already starting to move. California did it a couple of years ago. Big brands are really starting to adjust. And now operators are split right down the middle on this thing. Like it's pizza wars all over again. Some folks are saying that nothing changes. The dough still works. Like we don't need to do anything. My customers are happy. Let's just keep it moving. But other folks are coming in and saying, whether you like it or not, cleaner labels, future-proofing your business is what you need to be doing. You know what I mean? Get ahead of it now. That's what people are saying. Get ahead of it now. So what do? If you're running a shop like me with real pressure, real bills, your labor is tight, the margins are even tighter, and consistency matters more than anything every single day. Do you stick with what works in your shop, or do you make the move before you're forced to do it in your state? Today, we're not talking about theory. We're talking about what operators like you, like me, like a lot of folks that listen to this podcast are actually thinking. What does this mean inside my kitchen? What does this really mean? And what decision, are you going to make without blowing up your whole operation? So let's get into it. I mean, I think right from the beginning, the first thing we got to understand is that this isn't a trend, right? This isn't just some fad. This is regulation that's coming likely for us all. We've already seen early adopters in the US and in California and New York. We're seeing a lot of shops and a lot of operators voluntarily make the switch just because the research, is there. And you can go do your own research. Get on Google. You can learn all of the facts behind, potassium bromate and, using bleached flours and what that does. But it's not a trend. Like soon, so more shops will not have a choice. And a lot of folks have already made the switch. The question I want to ask is, are you waiting on that to happen to you, or are you going to get out in front of it? You know what I mean? And what we're doing and what I'm doing, and not that this is even a new thing, and we can go back. I started testing with, unbleached and non-bromated flour, unbleached, unbromated flours 3 years ago. We didn't ultimately make the switch back then, but probably ran through at least about 700-800 bags of flour from Caputo 3 years back in 2023. We wanted to, at that point, we wanted to understand what that meant for our operation. Could we adjust our recipe? We saw that the legislation was coming, was happening in California at that time and all over Europe, and we wanted to be in front of it. We didn't ultimately switch then. It didn't look like anything was going to happen on our front. We stayed put where we were with using our own in-house, our own flour brand. But we wanted to understand, what the implications were operationally. So working with it, understood that part of it. Cost was a major factor. Not even gonna lie, cost was a major factor that prevented us from making that jump then, because we were looking at essentially doubling the cost of our flour at that point. We weren't ready to make that switch. So I think that, and still puts me along the lines of trying to get out in front of it before this is something that is forced upon us. From a regulation standpoint, do I know which brand I'm going to use? Or no, I'm not. But what I'm doing is having conversations. I'm having conversations with other operators about what they're using, what they're seeing, how they're making adjustments. I'm having conversations with our distributors and the buyers and the folks from the purchasing department at PFG on what they can bring in, what they currently offer, and how that works, how that can work for us. I'll say this: there are no shortage of options when it comes to finding a flour that can work for whatever style of pizza you're using, whatever style of pizza you're selling. If you're anything like me, then you're probably thinking, I don't even know what these flours do. What does potassium bromate? Doesn't all flour have bleach in it? Like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not, I'm a pizza guy. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't even really fully understand it well enough to say whether or not it's this or it's that. But you can do some research and educate yourself. I think at a very, well, not I think, I can tell you that at a very high level, just from what I've been able to find and research and learn on my own and learn through conversations, is that what flour that has potassium bromate does is it makes a stronger dough, more gluten structure, stronger dough, more oven spring, more consistency, batch to batch. It really helps support the dough making process. And people are using it because it's much easier to manage. It's way more forgiving when we're talking about scaling and dealing with a staff and training. And it really helps high volume shops stay consistent. But that being said, there's an undeniable wave of folks that are moving away from it. And not just because of what we're seeing around the world, but in the United States. People are leaving and moving away from it because one, it has been linked to cancer concerns in lots of studies. It is for a fact banned in Europe and lots of parts of Europe and even other regions in the United States, California, New York, to name two. There is a lot of pressure on the retail side to make the switch. And, there is legislation that is building. Obviously, we're seeing that. And it's causing a lot of stir. The reality is, one, it is still legal in the United States right now. Still legal right now. Does not mean it's going to stay that way. The momentum is shifting state by state. So look at where you are, look at what's happening around you, and understand that change is most likely coming. But there's still going to be two sides of this thing. This is just part of how this discussion and this conversation has been going. There's side A that says, look, my dough works the way that it is. My customers are happy. We've done it this way for 100 years. I care about being consistent. If we switch products, then I'm going to risk, changing the quality of what I've been doing, or the recipe and the structure of what I've been doing. My margins are already tight. I can't afford to add that much cost to our one of our major products, which is probably our most used product is flour, right? But then there's the other side that's saying, look, you got to serve your customers better stuff. You have to be more conscious about that. You would be smart to get out in front of this, right? That's what they're saying. You'd be smart to get out in front of this before you're forced to do it and your options become more limited. It gives you something better to, a better discussion, a better product, a better way to, to serve your guests, right? And some people are saying that there is better flavor because there's just less chemical, more natural, more attention to the process, which brings out more of that artisan flavor, that artisan style. And there's something to be said for that, right? We're obviously charging more money because things cost us more. So maybe we should be given a better product. A lot of folks are saying that. What does that mean for you? I think you got to tell your own story, right? You got to still do what works for you and for your operation, right? If you're moving a lot of pies, your volume is very high, maybe you don't have the time or the space or the structure to completely rehash your process, or, reinvent your dough process. And I totally understand that. Maybe there's a solution for you at that point. If you're a smaller shop and you're leaning in towards, we're providing the best ingredients, the highest quality. And, I think that absolutely has to be part of your story, right? And, who gets stuck in the middle are a lot of the independent operators who are, trying to mimic how the big players and the big chains operate, because it has been proven to be, profitable, but still trying to maintain that high quality, that individualized service that, you know, that makes it, worth shopping at an independent, right? Um, those are just, some of the questions that you have to ask. Like, is your dough going to change? Is your staff going to struggle with producing this kind of a product? Will your food costs go up? How much will your food costs go up? Will the customers notice? Does anybody even care? Do your customers care? And that's really where I land on this thing. Is I am on the side of seeing that it is coming, right? It's happening. I'm in Florida. I'm not in New York or California. So I'm not forced to at this point, but understanding that I can see the shift. You see the conversations online. I'm in groups. I read a lot of, content around the industry. There want to be more conversations. And right now, most of those conversations are, internal, meaning inside the industry, but customers are going to start to ask questions and demand it. We see a lot of, pizza influencers and enthusiasts who are, even highlighting the fact that shops are using this certain products over this product. Oh, they're using or grande cheese, and they're using Caputo flour. They're using King Arthur flour. So these brands and these products are starting to become part of the experience for customers. So my question, what do you do if your customers start demanding it? Do you make the change? I think you almost have to at that point, right? You should at least have an answer for them. If they ask and you know nothing about it, or you don't have a plan, I think shame on us as operators if we don't know what we're going to do, if we don't have a plan for how we're going to move through that and move forward, right? That's what I say. So before your customers start to ask for it, And before your staff starts to look at it and say, what do we serve? Think about how you want to answer those questions and then act on it. Maybe you're in a situation where you're like, look, law's not changing here for a while. We don't need to do it. Our customers aren't asking. That's great. Stay there. But if the pressure's building, you may want to start thinking about it. You know what I mean? Ask yourself, do you sell on quality or do you sell on convenience? Can your current process handle a flour that's less forgiving, that takes a little bit more time to ferment, that needs more care and more attention? Can you handle that process? Well, ultimately, you got to ask yourself, what type of brand are you building? Are you building something that is set on doing things at a certain standard, at a certain level of quality? Are you trying to make as much money as possible? All fine, however you want to do it. I'm trying to make some money. Totally understand that. You have to make sure that you can answer those questions and then move accordingly. I think there's really, 3 different paths that you can take at this point. I think the first path is you just stay put. Keep doing what you're doing. Watch the laws, understand what's happening. Focus on still providing the best possible product you can where you are. I think path 2, which is where I am and where I'm going, is you sit back, you watch, but you test behind the scenes quietly. You run side by side dough tests. You compare texture and the rise of the dough and how you're handling it. And then you start to slowly implement. Or you can take the all-in approach and just switch. Find your flour. Update your story. Tell people what you're doing. Talk about it on your page. Capture the momentum that's behind this move right now. And then the most important thing you can do is talk to people. Talk to other operators. I see all the back and forth, and I'm not one for conflict, especially around this. These things should be collaborative. We should be learning, growing, understanding, and developing together, because these laws and the regulations and all these things that change, they affect us all. So how do we move accordingly? And that's kind of where I land on that thing. Here's the truth though. Most customers at this point are not asking about, is your flour bleached or bromated? They're not doing that today. But that can change quick once the news starts to hit or the media catches on. So this comes down to how you run your shop. If your system is built on consistency and on speed, you need to be honest about what will change if you have to change your process. If your brand is built on quality, quality service, quality ingredients, you need to be honest about whether your product matches that story. You know what I mean? Like, are you selling what you say you're selling? There's no perfect answer for any of this. There's only your answer. It's your shop. You have to run it your way for your customers. You can stay where you are, but make sure that you're paying attention. You can start testing. You can get better without your customers even noticing too. You can start to work behind the scenes in small batches, or you can go all in. Build your product and your story around making that change and doing that, making that move. But doing nothing and not thinking about it, that's the worst thing you can do. That's the only bad move in this whole situation. And, I really want to hear from you guys. What flours are you using right now? Have you started testing? Are you working on switching? What actually happened in your dough? Let's have those conversations. Send me a message, shoot me a DM, send me an email, info@tyrellreed.com. Come join us on the school group. Let's talk about it. I'll start a little thread and we can have that discussion in the private group. So let's just get some real data. Let's get some real conversations from operators who are interested in moving it forward and doing what's right for their customers. I'll actually see you guys next week. Peace. If you've gotten any value out of this episode or any of our other episodes, I need you to do me a favor. Go leave us a review. Every review on Apple, every 5-star rating on Spotify helps this show find more operators just like you and helps them get that same value that you're taking away from this episode. And as a thank you, anytime somebody leaves a review, sends me a screenshot, just DM me a screenshot of your review, I'm going to send you a free gift, something awesome, something cool. I'll send you a gift, whoever leaves a review. That's the challenge. Go leave a review, DM me a screenshot of it, and then I'll get you something. I got you something special from your boy. Now let's get back into the episode. Peace.